hit the record button here just for sake of posterity and
Okay.
Oh, record. Okay.
sure. Well, since we don't have a live audience of very large numbers, we'll record this so folks can look at it. We have let me remind you, a YouTube channel, LVACS is the YouTube channel. So we have some bunch of stuff up there. I've been recording all of our monthly section meetings, and so they're all up there. So if you miss one, you can relive it on YouTube. So in way of introduction, this year's theme for Chemists Celebrate Earth Week is reducing our footprint with chemistry. And the viewpoint I take on this, and I'm not sure whether it resonates through all of the ACS applied materials or not, but so what, is that it's really a focus not on what we normally think of when we talk about carbon footprint, is that, government's got to do something, industry's got to do something, but what can we all do, even as individuals, to reduce our footprint and therefore the total footprint? So a more personal approach to this, and I think there's a lot of sense to that in the way of getting people to really start looking at this as not a big amorphous problem, but a real personal problem. We're all responsible for it, so we should all try to do something. So in the spirit of that, talking about our shoe sizes, I thought we should get together a panel to talk about the carbon footprint and global warming and things in terms of what have we done. Let's talk about some stories, some success stories about what we've gone out and done on our own to reduce our own carbon footprint and therefore everybody's. And then had there been a larger audience, I would have opened up the floor for ideas, but we can still do that. I did that last year when we were celebrating virtually Earth Day 50. And we got some good ideas out of that actually led to some future webinars focusing on certain environmental issues, some of them solved, some of them not solved, around our local area. So I think it'd still be a useful thing to do. So I am going to take the chair's role and basically say, Sherman, would you like to tell us some of your stories about reducing your own footprint and the footprint of the world? And so I'm going to stop sharing here.
Okay.
You can go ahead and share something if you'd like.
So I guess I was thinking of starting out just by saying that my story is about my EV, which I converted an old gas car to an electric vehicle. So that's kind of a different sort of thing to do. But lots of people have done it actually. But the bigger picture behind that and my own personal attitude, I guess, has been much going all the way back to when I was younger. Things like you mow the lawn with a push mower, not a gas mower, things like that. If you need to chip your clippings, you buy an electric thing, not a gas thing. That's just always been my preference for all kinds of things. And then transportation, of course, is one of our major footprints. All of us, especially in the United States, right? So we all know that. And how do you reduce that? Well, I've always been a pro public transit, walking, biking, reduce your use of cars as much as you can. So that comes first, really. I mean, I think the EV story is a great one and fun one, but really, I think it's almost more important for us all to think more about how to change our lives, our lifestyles a little bit, right? So that we live a little less mobily. Think about the old days when it was all horses, right? If you wanted to take a trip to go shopping, okay, you had to plan it out more. And I think actually EVs are that way a bit too, right? You have to plan your trip. If you want to take a cross-country trip with an EV nowadays, right now, you can do it. People have done it. You have stories about that, but you got to plan it. You got to know, where am I going to stop? Where am I going to charge? Because there's not a gas, equivalent of a gas station every corner the way there is gas right now. We've just created this whole society, whole country, whole network where it's just easy to go anytime, anywhere, quickly. It's great, right? Everyone loves it. We all love it. I love it. But, if we want to reduce our footprint, we're going to have to change. And so.
Darn you, John D. Rockefeller.
Yeah. But anyway, so that's sort of the starting point. But the story of the EV goes back to the mid-aughts, I guess. I was going to, as I said, I've always liked alternative energy, solar energy, all that sort of stuff. So there was a nice festival out in Kempton called Alternative Energy Festival. I would go to that every year there for several years, and eventually petered out and stopped doing it. But it was a really nice festival. They always had a group of electric vehicle enthusiasts there with their cars that they had converted. So I had all these examples, and eventually, after a few years, I thought, hey, I have this old car. It's a 91 sedan Mazda. And maybe I could do that. Okay, so but I'm not a car mechanic kind of guy at all. Being a PhD, the chemist I am, you saw there in my background. I'm too much of an academic, so I didn't know how to do it.
Stuckey didn't teach you that?
No, actually, he flies planes, but I never learned how to do that either. But yeah, so I needed to figure out how to even approach it. So it took a while, but I met a few people there who had done it right and had some resources like, okay, so you have to take your car to a mechanic who can strip out all the gas stuff. Right? Basically, I couldn't do it myself, right? You need a big crane to take the motor out. But so anyway, eventually I decided to go for it. And so let me show you what I try to share something here, see if it'll work. So this, okay, do I have to share? Yeah, push share. So this website is called EV Album. And you can go here, and if you enter this number 3078, you'll see my car. So this is one of the times I had it towed in or out of my garage. So this is an old 91 Mazda Protege, and various information about it, some pictures. So it just shows you, oh, it really exists, right? It's a real thing. But the process I went through took quite a while. If anybody likes this idea of doing this sort of thing, you can still do it, obviously. I would advise you to do a little different than I did. I used a car that I had, it still worked. And, we had a second car. So when it was out of commission, we had one car, and that was a bit of an issue and didn't work out. So I would recommend finding a car with like a burned out engine or something. And actually the best kind of cars are actually small pickup trucks, but anyway. So like, here's a little picture. I don't know how well you can see that, but these are all the batteries. So it uses, these things are about, you can't even see how big they are, over a foot high, 9 inches wide, 3 inches thick. Each one, there's 40 of them. Those are lithium batteries. And actually it was a second generation. I went through 2 iterations. I started out in 2009 with lead acid batteries for 2 or 3 years. I got away. I have one of the things is how long is your commute, right? So when you're doing it yourself, your range is going to be limited a lot more than the commercial vehicles you can get now. But so I only have a 10-mile trip to work. So that was just about great. Even for lead acid batteries, I can go back and forth and do it and charge at home every night. And that is a thing about EVs in general. Even today, right? Everyone's worried about how far can I go. If your commute is, reasonable, less than 50 miles, one way even, you can use an electric vehicle today, right? You can buy one that'll go 100 miles or more every day, and you charge it at home at night, and it works perfectly. So it's a really nice way. And of course, the other thing about reducing your footprint with an EV is, of course, the electricity. So the fact that it uses electricity, the fact that electricity at least can be from renewable resources like the sun and the wind, and that the way electric motors work compared to internal combustion engines is so much more efficient than gas use. It's just 2 or 3 times. So all those things together help make this a way to make electric vehicles in general a way to reduce your footprint. I think it can be pretty compelling, I think. And of course, there's things like how they drive. It's different. It's quiet and it's smooth. And, you know, if you like your roaring engines, you know, people are going to have to change that attitude too. But I don't know whether there's anything interesting in here for anybody. But if anyone, you know, later wants to ask me anything about specifics, that would be great. But it was quite an adventure. I took the process of actually getting it, you know, the first day it was unusable, like everything was stripped out of it, to when I could drive it, it took 6 months. It should have taken 2 or even 1, but it took 6 months. So it was a bit of a nuisance. And, you know, I only did part of it. I did some design and drawings and figuring out how to fit everything in. This is under the hood here. It's pretty packed in there. And, but I don't have that many pictures here. I have lots of pictures, of course, but I don't think it's time to really show them right now. But it was a pretty fun adventure. I used the help of a pretty regular garage car place and a welding shop and an electrical guy who had done it on another car. So just someone who has some experience with it, and figuring out how to wire everything and do it in a safe way is also a bit of a challenge. So there's a lot to learn and a lot to understand. And it's pretty cool to do it yourself. You know, like any do-it-yourself project, you'll learn all kinds of stuff that you never thought you'd know, right? So if you do it, you know, especially if you're not a car mechanic kind of guy like me, you'll learn all kinds of things about your car, and you learn how it works. You know, if you push the gas, what was the gas pedal, the accelerator pedal down, and some click doesn't sound normal, you know what problem likely is, and that actually has happened, right? I got on the road, put the accelerator down, nothing happens. It doesn't go. It's like, help. But you know, you made the car, so you know, I got out, lifted the hood, tacked something. Oh, it works now. That's happened. There's been some problems, like a battery went bad, a single cell, you know, one of these blue cells here, a single one was lower than all the others. The system shuts the whole car down. You can't drive. So there's things like that can be annoying, can be a challenge. But so I've had to change out some of the batteries, buy new ones. They're expensive too. I mean, it wasn't a low cost option by any means. I mean, people can do it on the cheap if you get used parts, but the batteries are definitely the most expensive thing. That set cost around $10,000. So that's just a example.
10,000 is still fairly cheap, I think, in the world of electric vehicle today.
Yeah, I think you know, right, a big pack on a nice car today would be more like 20 or something in that range. But and they're coming down constantly. Yeah.
You're probably saving on some maintenance costs, right? So no oil changes, nothing like that.
Yeah, I take it every year for an inspection. Of course, I don't drive it as much as a lot of people drive a car. I drive it about 3,000 miles a year. So, but yeah, it really needs and this is true of electric cars and overall, that there's almost, other than the usual brakes, tires, the transmission, there's no oil, there's the motor almost totally maintenance free. So really it's down to brakes and tires. You have to, and maybe some things that move, steering, but those things last a long time in normal cars too. So yeah, that's a concern that I think a lot of automakers and auto dealers have, is that their money they make from repairs will be much less. But it'll change things if EVs, if electric vehicles become a big part of the market. Yeah, it'll be interesting, I think, over the next few years to see how much
they almost did over 100 years ago, of course.
Right. That's a part of the story, right? I was thinking of telling that. Yeah, the cars, first real automobiles were electric, and they were little city cars. I think they were aimed at women mostly. They were quiet and slow and nice to ride around in the city, and they would go maybe 10 or 20 miles, and you would charge them. But they worked really hard. Yeah, 100 years ago. Yeah, 200, 100, 120 years ago. Yeah.
Yeah. Something like
around the turn of the century.
1900. Yeah.
Yeah.
So if
The
you have,
other-
if you have 20 miles of range, does that mean that you have a danger of getting stuck in traffic and getting stuck?
Yeah, I mean, it does actually. Yeah. If you only have 20 miles and you're trying to go, 18, there's a slight chance that, a battery might fail early, or if you didn't quite charge it enough, or, I mean, it's happened to me in this car
Really?
with the lithium batteries. That, again, what I said, one of them got too low, and I was somehow ignoring the warning signs, and like the charger, actually the charger failed is what really happened. And it wasn't charging, but I thought it was for some reason. It was kind of silly. So I was driving back and forth to work, and after like three 20-mile commutes, and I'm up to 60 miles, and I don't think one of the batteries is totally dead, and my car shuts down, and I'm driving and this car shuts down, and I just have to pull over. There's no, I have to get a tow. So that's happened a couple times actually. But it's mostly my own fault. I haven't paid attention.
So with your setup, are you able to use the charging stations around the Lehigh Valley, or do you?
That's a good question. And the answer is no.
Okay.
I can only really use a standard plug.
Okay.
In my garage there, I have a 220 volt outlet
Okay.
that I can use, so that my charger is in the car. It's only yay big, and it automatically senses whether it's 110 or 220. It can use either one.
Okay.
And at 110 volts, it takes 20 hours maybe. If you had the whole thing discharged really well, it would definitely take overnight. At 220, it takes 5-6 hours. And my daily commute, again, is only 20 miles, so it takes a couple hours to charge up. But yeah, so yeah, the fancy ones around there are more and more of them around. Yeah, they use these special plugs with a kind of a gun-shaped handle, and they have all these interlocks and detection, fancy, and it's all good for safety, right? So this is a homemade thing. It's basically a regular electrical outlet coming out of the thing. So you plug it into a regular circuit. So yeah, that's good. That's a good point though about charging, and then the fact that it has an onboard charger is a nice thing. I think some of the newer cars only don't have them, and they rely on the external.
So that's when you're going downhill, you can. No, I'm asking.
What do you mean? What do you mean?
When is it charging?
Oh no, it charges only when you plug it in. So regenerative braking is present probably in all the commercial cars. Yeah, so they will charge as just like a Prius does that too. Hybrids do it. They charge the batteries when you're slowing down or braking. This car, it's possible to put that into a homemade version, but that's more sophisticated, more costly up front. So I didn't do that. So yeah, I only charge it from an outlet. Yeah. I mean, I can charge it at work some because there's some outlets outside that I can plug into, but I don't usually do that. So maybe.
Yeah, I've seen this vehicle, and I had no idea that this little
Yeah,
red car was electric.
I tried to make it obvious that it's electric. I put some bumper stickers that say EV or all electric VEV or something on them. It doesn't get a lot of attention. I kind of expected when I first did this, so I get people walking up to me, what's going on with this? I don't know. There's not a lot of curiosity maybe in this area about it, but anyway.
Yeah.
It's fairly subtle, I guess. Yeah.
This all reminds me of a conversation that I instigated in one of the classes I'm teaching this semester. So I'm teaching a class on the sophomore expedition course going to Costa Rica. And Costa Rica, if you're not familiar, has made great strides in embracing renewable energy, and something like 98% of their electricities come from renewable sources in the last several years. And one of their big pushes now is because they still have a reliance on fossil fuels in the transportation sector. They're trying to have more electric vehicles on the road, less gasoline powered vehicles on the road. And I was trying to get a conversation going with my students in the class. I'm like, well, why does that work for a small country like Costa Rica? Why doesn't it work here? And if we wanted that sort of thing to happen here, what would we need to do?
Yeah. That's a good conversation. I mean, people who live, especially more rural people who have farther to drive to get anywhere,
Mhm.
they don't have as easy a time trying to use electrics. Although I think with the bigger batteries, the longer ranges, you know, if you can go 250 miles, 300 miles, even 400 miles in some of the cars now available. What's the difference between that and gas? You just have to have a place to charge it. But,
Yeah. And the infrastructure is a big thing. I mean, if you want people to be encouraged to buy electric cars once they become more affordable, which they are getting more affordable,
Yeah.
but they need to be able to charge it. And if they're not in a area where those charging stations are readily accessible, it's not going to be something that everybody signs up for.
Yeah, and then of course people who live in apartments and things, if they don't, if, like in a house, you have a garage or something, or you can install your own charger. You can install a way to charge it, even if it's outdoors. But if you live in an apartment and you don't have a charger, it's much more of a harder thing, because you got to be able to do it, you know, overnight. I mean, you know, I think longer term, really to reduce footprint. These cars in general are so underused, right? It's sort of the Uber example, I guess, but you know, really, or even autonomous cars. You know, if the cars were always driving around and always recharging and always in use, it would be a lot more efficient, wouldn't it? We'd have less footprint if we had that. Yeah. That's a huge change.
We are a nation of cars.
Yeah. And another thing I was going to talk about, again, from the point of view of just transportation in general. So, you know, I'm not only and Nigel, you know this, I ride my bike a lot. Okay. So I just actually today, my first day riding to work and back on my bike was today, this year. So that's something I started doing. I think even before I changed this car over, was riding my bike to work. So again, it's a 10-mile ride. So it's not short for a bike ride, but it's quite doable. And I would encourage people to look at that, right? So it's, again, there's challenges. You have to live your life a little differently. And it takes certain maybe advantages or something. Like at your work, if it's a long ride, if you don't have a place to shower or something, you're going to have a bit of an issue. If it's a short ride, you just take it easy and you don't need to have a problem. And then there's things like parking your bike. Where do you leave it? You know, I have a good situation. I can take it inside and leave it in a room. But you know, if you don't have that, I've noticed things like the Lehigh Valley Hospital in their parking garage, they have bike lockers. So there are more and more businesses that offer places to leave your bike. And then biking, of course, people are very reluctant to do it in city streets, and I perfectly understand that. You got to get used to that. You got to become confident, and so there's issues around that too. But I really enjoy riding, and I do it a lot, as much as I can. So it's another way to reduce your footprint, walking and biking.
I was curious about that, how safe you feel. Are there bike routes where you live, or are you out in the main traffic?
Yeah, there's no bike routes. You just have to get used to riding. One thing you do, you find a route that's it's a little longer maybe, but it's a little quieter in terms of traffic. But there's sometimes you can't avoid. Like I have to go over the river, or Lehigh River, to get to work. So a bridge, it's going to be busy no matter what. So the bridge I end up using is the American Parkway Bridge, which actually I end up riding on the sidewalk. You're not supposed, riding on the sidewalk is against the law, but of course people do it. But it's against the rules.
Remember, this is being recorded.
Yeah, but you know, people have to. So that's one spot. That's like a 4-lane highway there, and people go 65 miles an hour over that bridge, and there's no space for a bike. So I've used to do it some, and of course, since there's 2 lanes in each direction on that bridge, people can pass you, things like that. But they go too fast. And so and I have a friend who rides with me a lot of the time too. But anyway, yeah, riding and feeling safe, it's an issue. And you just get used to it. And you, of course, you outfit yourself and you become prepared. It's like a safety thing at work, right? It's like PPE, and you wear all the lights going off all the time, and you make yourself visible. And then you have to be super aware of what's going on all around you the whole time you're riding out there. That's really and you have to feel confident that, okay, I'm going to be okay. Otherwise, yeah, it's not worth it. But it's a great way to stay healthy and reduce footprint too. So I do that too, just as another thing.
There was a professor at Lehigh for many, many years, rode his bike to work every day.
Yeah. I had a guy I knew at Air Products who retired fairly recently. He rode no matter what. Yeah, every day. I mean, snow, ice. He even had tires that had studs in them, so he could ride on the ice. It's like, that's not me. I only ride on nice weather days, honestly, like today, beautiful day.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess that's enough for me.
Yeah, very good. I mean, it's really all about changing our point of view, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so.
Things that we say, oh, that's impossible. Nobody's going to do that.
Yeah,
you have
people
to
who do.
You can't. Yeah.
I mean, there's only a few of us out there. Like I didn't see another person riding to commute today, right? I saw a couple of bicyclists, but they were more casual. So just as an example, yeah, it's not that common. EVs aren't that common. Bicycling to work is not that common, but it's certainly not far from impossible. You just have to decide.
Yeah, Sherman, you and I have spent a lot of time in Europe, and man,
it's very common. Yeah.
Get out of the way. Here come all the bicycles.
Yeah. Right. And of course, in bigger cities, obviously there's bike shares and all kinds of things available. And there's much more, Lorena, that's much more bike paths and along streets and protected areas and things like that. So there are areas where it's a lot easier than it is around here. Yeah.
Okay.
Do I have to do anything to stop sharing or?
Actually, I can kick you off.
Yeah, why don't you do that? Why don't you do that? There we go.
So, Lindsay, would you like to tell us about a sustainable campus?
Yeah.
Sure. So I put together some slides that I used in one of my first year seminar courses about different initiatives that I've read about and that some have been implemented at Cedar Crest to make a more sustainable campus. And it was really a conversation starter to get ideas of how we could reduce a footprint on college campuses. So it's only about 9 slides, but hopefully I'll just get a little bit of conversation started. So I guess I can go full screen here. So kind of each slide is a different category. So the first is housing and looking at how housing can be used to promote a sense of sustainability on campus. So one example is the creation of a living learning community. This is a common practice on college campuses where you have housing that is themed and that you have students with common values and they live together and they have student activities and they meet and discuss ways to be a more sustainable group of students and to promote these thoughts amongst the students in that residence hall. Other ideas related to housing are organized waste disposal, perhaps composting, making sure that recycling is not only an option, but that students are actually recycling and putting their recyclables in the right receptacles and making sure that things are disposed of properly. And then also improvements to the actual infrastructure could be options to make the buildings more energy efficient, installing solar panels, using water more sensibly and more sustainably. So other ideas are if there is in the budget, which I know a lot of budgets are strained right now, if there is money in the budget to upgrade buildings to make them more energy efficient, there could be more spaces that are created that use natural light. So instead of using lights powered by energy, we can just use natural light to in occupiable spaces.
Yeah, could I just point out, yeah, I think all these
Sure.
points are great, and they're perfectly applicable to people's homes, right? So
Exactly.
everybody should pay attention to, and try to do any of those things you can. Do you have any comments about recycling? I mean, as chemists, I think it's maybe a chemical thing, right? So there's been problems in the market, right? And I don't keep up with it that closely, but I know that some things you may put in a bin, and maybe, I don't really know, it's taken by a truck, right? And is it really recycled, or is part of it thrown out and part of it recycled? Do you know anything about it? It's a complicated area, I think.
I think it really depends on the business that handles your waste.
Yeah.
I know that that's been an active conversation for our sustainability on campus, and that we've been working with our director of facilities and working with our director of like dining services to make sure that stuff's being disposed of properly and that we know what's actually happening. There was a big, call it a controversy, that there were dark colored bags were supposed to be for garbage and light colored bags were supposed to go for recycling. And if the right colored bag was not in the right bin, then they all got thrown in the dumpster anyway. So it's making sure that everything's organized, and that, say, the people who are emptying waste bins at the end of the day, they need to make sure that they're following whatever protocol to make sure that waste is disposed of properly.
We were also raising that a little bit as an ethics problem at Penn State, because I have the feeling there's a lot of work going on with sustainability, the kind of committees that cross the different campuses. But sometimes it's really hard to know even what company we're engaged with at each campus, and therefore to understand what their practices are and where the waste or the recyclable materials ultimately go. So we were trying to frame this in a conversation about ethics and how it's, at this point, it's a moral responsibility of a university or of an employer to make that information available to the people that are, using that campus. That we can't have this lack of information anymore about where our stuff is going. And that's something that needs to be crystal clear and, informed up front. So we'll see how that goes.
Yeah, we actually put together a lot of the students involved in our sustainability club and sustainability committee. They put out a messaging campaign over the past academic year saying, this is what you can recycle. So if you are putting stuff in a recycling bin, it can be cardboard, it could be plastic, it can be aluminum, but it cannot be this. It cannot be dirty food containers and things like that.
Yeah, it's an important point. We're having the same problem at work. Where I work is that we have recycling bins, but people say, at least, and they're just tossed. So is it worth going into the trouble of segregating things or not? So yeah, it's not an easy thing to really learn and know about. But I wish things like what Lorena said was more true, that more organizations would push harder to no. I mean, if for now we have to throw things away, okay, we can deal with that for a little while, but it has to change. We have to have some movement toward an improvement there.
Well, I think there was impetus when China was taking just about anything, but then they stopped.
That's the big change.
About 3 or 4 years ago.
Yeah.
And they're very picky now and only take very certain things. And I think that's kind of left a lot of the communities just flat in terms of their recycling programs. I mean, I know Bethlehem Township, where I live, they were they were having us separate and taking things for recycling. They've just stopped.
Really? Completely?
Yeah.
Wow.
On the positive side, now we recycle soft plastics in the area, which is something that was not happening before. So, those supermarket bags, those, thin, light plastic bags. I believe there's a facility in Pottstown now that's been
Really?
working for a year or so.
Yeah, if you find a place, a recycling center, and Bethlehem, the city of, has a nice one, the Thies Cornfeld Recycling Center, you can take your stuff there, and it is recycled.
Is that the one over,
Across from the golf course, the Bethlehem Golf Course.
right, like off of
By the-
Shanersville Road there?
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I drop stuff by there from work actually, because they take quite a variety of things that other places don't.
Mhm.
Even styrofoam, although they limited what they take, but they do take styrofoam.
All right. Well, the next slide that I have is about environment in the curriculum. We are an educational institution, and so why not educate people about sustainability? So Cedar Crest in particular already has an environmental conservation major. It attracts students every year. So, but should we consider implementing a requirement that all students take a course to be educated on sustainability? There have been some college campuses that have chosen that as a part of their curriculum. We're having some lighting alterations here. Okay, and also there could be more courses that are created focusing on sustainability, focusing on environmental justice. So there was a course that was actually just created this semester. I'm looking forward to hearing how it goes, but it's a political science course. It's focused on environmental justice and the policies related to it. So there have been college campuses across the United States that have environmental responsibility pledges. There are sustainability certificates that you'll see popping up on college campuses. And that's actually something that I'm going to be working on with the fellow professor at Cedar Crest, is to make some kind of additional certificate or minor or something in sustainability at Cedar Crest. I have the example here that students across campus at Appalachian State University can make a pledge for social and environmental responsibility. They had actual, say, I forget what the sashes that they wear at graduation. So if they make the pledge, it's like a green sash they wear over their gown when they walk across the stage for graduation. So back to buildings. So in general, buildings on campus could be made more sustainable by installing solar panels, looking at green rooftops. If you've ever visited the ACS headquarters down in Washington, D.C., they have a green rooftop, and this is getting more and more common in that they have like a garden that's growing on top of the building, and they use that space. So that's an opportunity. Also, finding ways to capture rainwater, being more sustainable as just the buildings that exist on our college campuses.
A couple of local examples of green rooftops. One's, do you know the Pool Wildlife Center? It's South Cedar Crest Boulevard. It's a little wildlife. It's part of the Wildlands Conservancy.
Okay.
Anyway, so that's one of the local environmental groups, and they have a building they built and it has a green rooftop. And I think Air Products sponsored that, so, and I think that isn't the PPL building the big one downtown that's in some financial problems, but I think it has a green rooftop too.
Interesting.
Yeah, so there are local examples too.
I think the new Da Vinci Center in Allentown is going to have that.
Oh, I bet.
I bet.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Those mock-ups in the news, I thought it looked so real. The mock-ups were so lifelike.
That's true. That's true.
Like
For solar panels, I wish, there were more, but of course, there's a nice field of them off 22. I think
Right.
it's, what's the
Moravian
school?
Academy.
Moravian Academy has it.
Right. Yeah.
It's right in my backyard, just about.
Yeah. So then to transportation. So depending on whether you're a large school, small school, I mean, we have a Penn State representative here thinking about buses that are having students transported across campus. Are those buses, say, electric buses? Think about a small campus. Are students walking across campus? Are they biking across campus? What is the best way for these students to be transported just on the campus? And are they still using, say, those golf carts to go across campus when it's just as easy to walk across a campus in 5 minutes if it's a small school? So what is necessary? What kind of energy do we need to be expending for transportation? Oh, go ahead.
I think that since you mentioned Penn State, I think the buses up at University Park are hydrogen. I will Google that while you're speaking, and then I'll let you know.
Yeah, and so that's certainly something that's getting more common. There are also initiatives regarding students who are commuting to campus. So maybe ride sharing so that fewer cars are transporting individuals to and from campus. There have been instances of college campuses where those golf carts that are toting people around for whatever reason, maybe they're running on biofuel. I know that there have been lots of college campuses that recycle the fry oil from the dining services and fuel their golf carts on their campus. So there are lots of opportunities for that on all size campuses. Other initiative is to create more on-campus employment. So for students who live on campus, if they can also work on campus, then they don't have to drive off campus and reduce their carbon footprint in that way.
That's a great thing for in general too, right? So living near your work, that's the whole theme that more and more people should try, right?
Or post-pandemic, why are we commuting at all?
Yeah, right. And then there's that. Now that we can work from home, but a lot of people can't. And if you're a chemist and you work in the laboratory, I've actually mainly been going into work all this past year, but because I do some lab work. But that's just a theme, right? Try to find a place to live that's close to your work. I mean, if you can, it's perfect, right? Really helps.
Right. Did you find an answer, Lorena?
Yeah, back from 2007, they were already converting the fleet of buses up at University Park to hydrogen. And here at Penn State Berks, we have the maintenance vehicles running on biofuel. Gotcha. So yeah, it's a rich topic to explore, you know, the many different ways you can avoid regular combustion.
Right. So then next idea is, where is the energy that's being used on campus coming from? Are the energy companies that the campus uses, are they sourcing their energy from renewable sources? Are they burning fossil fuels to create that electricity? So where does that electricity come from? Nowadays, we do have options. While our whoever is supplying the energy to us may not be an option, the individuals who generate it is an option. So you often see on your utility bills that you can choose what generator is making your electricity, but like I said, the supplier may not be an option. I already mentioned earlier that we could create more spaces which use natural light. And that is a way to reduce our footprint as far as using less energy. And another thing that I've found fairly common is organizing all campus power off activities. Turn your screens off, turn your lights off, and we have activities where, or days or periods of time when nobody's using power. You don't have to be in a space with lights on, you don't have to have any kind of screen on, and you're just doing something that's probably healthier because you're not tied to a screen. You're not using energy inside. Maybe you're going out for a walk. Maybe you're just enjoying the outdoors. Recycling and composting in general. So I mentioned this a little bit earlier, but we had actually a nice conversation about adding transparency to the waste handling and recycling on campus. And it sounds like that's a common conversation, not only on college campuses, but other employers. So dining services is one of the major sources of waste on a college campus. So making sure that they have a sustainable plan. We just had a renewal of our contract with our dining services but we did have a turnover in the director. So the new director on our campus has been very vocal and open to ideas of making their practices more sustainable, because that's one of the goals that we have moving forward on our campus. They look for locally sourced food options, and we just approved investing in reusable takeout food containers so that students who are getting food to take out of our little bistro on campus, it's not styrofoam, it's not even a recycled material like cardboard. It's actual plastic container that they can then return. It's washed at dining services and then used again. So that's something that's getting more and more common. Other ideas that I've seen other campuses use are having a campus garden. So locally sourced foods, it could be foods that are grown right on campus. It makes me think of Del Val down south of the Lehigh Valley. They're an agricultural campus. A lot of their majors are focused around agriculture, and they've got farms right there at their campus. So lots of recycling and composting initiatives are focused around food on campuses.
I had been hoping to get someone from Rodale to join this group, but
Nice.
they weren't able to. But I think Sherman pointed that out to me. That's a rich source of information in this area.
Yeah, the Rodale Institute. It's not the publisher. It's they've been working on organic farming for longer than anybody, I think, out west of the Allentown area. So
I think they
yeah,
sold.
they're real.
Yeah, I think that's.
Well, yeah. It's not. It's a separate organization. Yeah, Rodale Publishing got sold to Hearst, I guess. but yeah, So they're a nonprofit that I've been not involved in, but donating to for many years, and I think they have really good. They do real research, agricultural research on farms out there, on how organic farming benefits the environment, the soil, captures CO2 in the soil. They've been pushing that a lot recently, that if everybody adopted certain soil practices, all farms, the CO2 absorbed out of the atmosphere would be gigantic. I mean, you could solve the problem almost, from what they say. I haven't reviewed it in detail or anything, but it sounds really interesting. And
Yeah.
Tuskegee of the North. How about that?
Yeah, they're interesting. It's nice to take a tour out. You can go out there and they have all kinds of activities for kids, and
Oh, wow.
so they have a place to visit and things. Yeah, if you want to learn about.
We should consider that as maybe as a section.
Maybe. Yeah.
You think in the future?
Could be. Yeah.
Sure.
That's a great idea, and it's close to Premise Made, where one can get
We could stop there.
one can get
That's
good
right.
chocolate and ice
Yeah.
cream.
You know
Like
that.
footprint of Travis made first.
There you go.
I don't think I've ever tried that chocolate. I know I've driven by the place, but I don't think I've ever tried it.
I'm not sure I'm either.
It's lovely. The store is beautiful inside, and the smell of fresh chocolate is
Oh, I always love
just
that.
delicious.
Mhm.
All right. This is something that's getting more and more common everywhere you look, is water bottle fill stations. So instead of just having the classic water fountain, you can now put your bottle right under there and fill up a bottle, instead of having the single-use plastic bottles that are going to fill up the recycling bins. So having a reusable bottle that you can fill on campus in many places, or even at your workplace, wherever that may be, it is definitely a practice that's getting more and more common. But how are we going to get students and individuals working on campus to embrace that and stop buying those single-use plastic bottles? Because they still do, because it's easy and it's available as a way that you can drink water on campus. You can buy the individual single-use bottles that have the campus logo on them. So
Stop selling them.
I know. That's kind of what I'm getting at. But say giving out campus logo reusable water bottle to every incoming student so that they use the filling stations would be an idea. But
So
yeah,
either
should
that
we
or-
eliminate?
Go ahead.
Should we eliminate it?
Yeah, it's either that or calcium alginate water pods.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Hose. That's your other alternative.
Gotcha. So this is an easy one, and lots of places are taking advantage of it. And then my last idea is investing in sustainability. So colleges that have the endowments, they have the option of where they're investing, and they have the option of where they're not investing. So there is the option for the powers that be on college campuses to opt for investing in green energy and opting out of funding companies that would not support sustainability. So should it be an option for college campuses to send a message and divest in companies which deny climate change? That's another conversation, but this is something that has been discussed for college campuses across the nation.
Should be an option for ACS too.
Mm?
Yeah, how big is the ACS investments? I don't know.
That's above my volunteer pay grade.
Yeah, right.
No idea.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know whether anybody noticed, but Nigel showed my little bio, where I went to college. So I went to one of the colleges that has the biggest endowments in the country, right? So, and so this issue has been one they've been dealing with ever since I was there, because back then it was divest in South Africa, actually, I think. Any businesses that do back in the 70s, 80s. So, but I've read, in alumni stuff that, this exact issue and the investment people there, who of course made incredibly good money and incredibly good investments, but they've refused to, for a long time, to divest from like oil companies, as an example. I don't know all the specifics, but I think they're kind of redoing that right now. And so there's a lot of activity all the way up to the big boys, you might say. It's an important area, I think.
Yeah,
And of course,
same issue.
yeah, you were in Harvard too. I'm sure it's a big issue there too. But of course, it applies to individuals too, right? If we have some money to invest, how do we invest it? That's been something I've also thought about ever since I had enough money to invest, which, so if you do have some, think about this. I think that's for everybody.
There are a lot of chemists in fossil fuels. So
yeah, I bet. I mean, if you work for a company that makes chemicals from fossil fuels, well, you're probably going to invest in your own company, at least to some degree. Mm-hmm. I wouldn't expect anything different, right? But you still need to think about it. What do you want to do? It's an issue. It's a bit of a conundrum sometimes, right?
Right.
But I think there's a lot of evidence that sustainable investments, what they call ESG investments nowadays, actually give better returns overall than a lot of the less sustainable. Because of the word sustainability, even, right, implies in business that if you're sustainable, you're a better company. I mean, by definition, almost, right? If you're truly sustainable. Now, the definition of that, it gets bent all over and used in different ways. But yeah, I think it's a really interesting area. Anyway.
Well, this is great. Sherman and Lindsay, thank you so much for putting this together. Thank you, Rica, for listening.
Thanks, Lorena,
Thank you. Yes, thank you for being a captive audience.
No, I'm really into this. So
that's good.
It's a pleasure to hang out and listen to your perspectives.
Good.
So this will be recording will go up on YouTube eventually. What I'll do is I'll get you guys the link first so you can take a look at it. But I think it's going to be great, and I think topics like this generally, in my experience, get quite a few views on YouTube. So I would expect that a number of people will look at this, and not just ACS chemists people, but the general public. So that's great. I think here's some very personal viewpoints. I think that's what we need in the conversation. So
Yeah.
The little red car will become famous.
If I get some, my email was there, I'm okay. If you want to email me about my electric car or contact me about it, that's great.
Yeah, you're
Appreciate
gonna
it. I
get a
would
fan
actually
club
appreciate
for some investors.
it. That I don't really need, but anyway.
Okay, well,
Okay.